Hello, internet friends, and welcome to episode number 186 of FinalBossTV, the WoW and Game rating show today, and one of the very last few potentially times, depending on I have to keep saying this, just to keep triggering the YouTube comments, that intro will be updated soon enough, and the whole intro of the show will be changed, just so you know when it happens. You're like, what is this? I don't know what this is anymore. But what today is the Protection Warrior show, and winter is coming. You know, I had a ton of quotes set up for this, but winter is coming is the biggest one. So Game of Thrones is back, so you can pair up your Final Boss TV and your Game of Thrones back to back. I've even got like a sweater on today, even though it's not cold in Florida, but you know, just to cosplay for the event. But don't post spoilers. Come on, don't be that way. Just, well, if you're on the internet, go off the internet for at least 6 weeks and then come back, and we'll see you then, I guess. Or we'll find you on YouTube. But today's show is going to be all about the Protection Warrior, and I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for some very special nerds and ladies I have to extend my support for, supporting the show, the stream, and everything in between over on the show's Patreon page. Without them, this would be a much smaller overall production. And if you like what I do here and want even more podcasts, behind-the-scenes show notes, and a whole bunch of other little things and stuff that I put together over there, that's going to be over on the show's Patreon page, linked down below. Or, of course, if you're watching on YouTube right now, it is in the description box. But you can follow along with the show notes, and there are extra podcasts we put together that are off the script, that are just behind-the-scenes-y kind of nonsense, rant, and extra discussion. You can find those right there. RSS feedable. And again, all the actual shows get archived to the YouTube channel if you did miss any of those in the past, as well as the side content that I put together. So you can go check all these out over on the show's YouTube channel as well, if you did miss anything. And of course, iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play Music are where you can get the show's audio only. You can just go to FinalBoss.tv and you can hook in the audio only stuff right there if you need to. Take it wherever you want to go. But today, we have one returning and two new guests. Marok, welcome back to the show, sir. It's been a while, and you're on camera this time. Who is this?
Yep. It's been, what, like 2 years or something?
It's like February 2017. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. It's good to be back, though. Thanks for having me.
A little bit has happened with the Shield boy since then, would you say?
Yes. Yeah, quite a lot. Yeah, because when that was early Legion, or like 7.1, I think, was last time. And Prot's pretty different now. So yeah, it's been a lot of stuff.
Joining you today to help break all the stuff down is Lala. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hello. Pretty excited to be here.
You've got MDI on the other monitor, I think, yeah?
Oh yeah. Keeping a close eye on that.
Yeah? I wonder what's going to happen. You're just watching to make sure you react to any of the time that the Prot Warrior dies, right? Is that what you're doing?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Giggle about it.
And then super serious farming mounts here. We have Sense. Hello, sir. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
He is actually prepping IRL for the Najatar patch already.
Yeah, that's right.
You gotta wait for your nerfs, but you've already got your fish behind you. I like it.
That's right.
So, over the course of today, and again, we haven't talked about Prot Warrior specifically since, let me double check. I really think it was like February. Goodness me, and then 2017. It was quite a while ago. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to click on. So, first off, we're going to go back around again real quick here because we have two new guests on the show today to talk about thunderclapping all the things. So, Sense, what do you do and dabble in the world of Warcraft? How long have you been playing Prot Warrior, being part of said dabbling? Do you put together any resources or guides, or are you just a guinea pig? What do you do in the community, sir?
I've been playing since vanilla. I played a rogue back then, had an alt warrior in TBC, and I swapped over to tanking full time and a mop. I think was when I swapped over in the guild. As far as guides or anything like that, I just do the blockable / reflectable guide for people. So it's like go and test stuff, see what you can block, see what you can reflect, and just put that on the spreadsheet, and then that's about it for that.
Ooh, where is that resource located?
It's in the Skyhold Discord server.
I can link it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a resource. Make sure you put that in our Discord too, so I can put that in the YouTube stuff too.
There
That
you go. I got a link
is.
there.
Let me give you. I'm gonna give you one of these. That's crazy. I didn't know. So you go around and find all the stuff that you can essentially break with.
More or less, yeah.
How many things have you found in the past that Blizzard takes away from you?
Quite a few.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Quite a few.
Oh.
The big one was the Gahoon.
Oh.
That was fun.
Did you get that taken away, or did Max get that taken away, or did Max find out from you and then Max showed it on stream and then Blizzard?
I did it a couple months before that clip got popular. I just didn't put it on there so that it wasn't a widely abused thing. But yeah, it's pretty broken.
Yep, but no one really knew at the time because no one used Prot Warriors on Yahoo.
Exactly. Yep.
So that's what we had to thank you for. I like it. Lala, how about you, sir? What do you dabble in the world of Warcraft? How long have you been playing Prot Warrior?
I have played since vanilla pretty casually back then. I didn't start playing Warrior till the end of Wrath. I didn't start really like raiding in like a serious environment until WAD HFC era, a little before that in like BRF. But since then I've always just been like trying to keep up with a casual schedule, semi-hardcore raiding environment. And other than that, I'm Marok's guinea pig. He says something sounds cool to go test, and I'm like, I'm gonna go try that.
Pretty much.
So like my analog from the Enhancement Shaman community, when Persian Word Up says, this is pretty good, and I ask what's good, then I just go do it on stream. Okay.
Yep.
I can respect that. And then Marok, who the heck are you, sir? And what have you done since the 2017 show?
Not a whole lot new. I've also been playing since vanilla and like main Prot since Wrath pretty much. But main things I do is just run Skyhold, the Warrior Discord, do like kind of like Prot 3 crafting and stuff like that. I make like some weak auras and things like that. That's pretty much it.
So I wanted to give a quick little side shout out here too with one of the past guests, but the Wowhead guide writer. So do you guys work together with Larold to put everything together there? I don't know if there's a rift between the Wowhead stuff or the Icy Vein stuff by chance, but Marok, do you guys all sort of collaborate and smoosh that all together, or how does that all work with you guys?
Yeah, we talk sometimes, and yeah, I guess that's the other thing I do, right? The Icy Veins guide. But the Wowhead and the Icy Veins guide, they're a little bit different. Just the way things are laid out, of course, and all of that. Yeah, we talk to Larold and things like that. So more or less, they should both be like good guides to read.
Okay. And then are there any other resources that you want to make the Protection Warrior players out there aware of? Do you guys have everything sort of coagulated inside the Skyhold Discord, or is there anything else out there? I mean, because we talked about the Google document, that's going to be there as well. But you don't have like a web page front like some of the other communities put together, do you?
We have. So I made there's like a Skyhold website, skyhold.gg, but I haven't updated it in a long time.
2 years.
Well, shame.
It's been like the last thing posted to it was October 19th of last year. But in the Skyhold Discord, there's a guides channel or resources channel that has like pretty much everything listed in it.
Okay.
And then I guess really the only other resource that I kind of recommend is Tank Notes, tanknotes.tk. Panthea makes that, and it's a really good site for tanks and like tips on certain bosses and stuff.
That's actually a website. Let me pull that up here real quick. This was talked about on a previous show a while ago, and it was in its infancy, I think back in Legion, when it was discussed or at least brought up. And it's come a long way since then, right? Let me go through here. Where does all the information get pulled together for Tank Notes? Is it from a different just grouping of tanks, or how do you guys put all this stuff together?
Panthea, he has a Discord for the site. I know some people make suggestions there and stuff, but I think it's mostly just him. Like he tests stuff or looks at streams and things like that, and he just puts everything together.
Huh. And this walks, I'm looking at Jaina right now, walking through everything here with the different little clips of different things happening and interactions, tank profile damage, all this stuff, tanking notes. Interesting. I know this was a resource that was coming into its own, but awesome. All tanks. Yep. We'll have to see what gets updated here in 8.2 when things shift slightly. But I suppose more on that as everything develops. But I wanted to go with a look into the past first. And every spec show gets sort of asked a similar question in this opening segment. But the past and the future and the current present state of the sword and board warrior, it always seems that the Prot warrior, Prot paladin always have this weird, totally either OP, always use them, always have one in your raid group, or then there are long stints of just use bears and brewmaster monks and don't worry about the sword and board warrior or the paladin. I just not that good, right? So why is this a weird sticking point for Blizzard to figure out balancing with this imperfect imbalance? Do they want tanks just to have to play different ones as the tiers and the patches roll by? Or is there something that has been hard for them to get, I guess, numerically figured out? Because the other tanks will have the different mitigation styles versus the actual shield tanks. But Marok, what have you sort of, what do you think the decisions and problems they've run into over the years have been?
Yeah, a lot of people say that like block tanks they're too hard to balance or whatever, just because of the way the mitigation works. I don't really necessarily agree with that. In my opinion, I think it's just a sort of classic Blizzard pendulum where they like something is weak or perceived as weak and they overbuff it, and then it's like everyone plays that, and it just kind of goes back and forth. I would say at the beginning of BFA, before they did like they buffed Vanguard like 3 times before they buffed Prot a few times. I would say Prot was in a really good like balanced spot overall, and now we're
definitely
kind of overpowered a little bit. So I think it's just a matter of it's just community perception, and Blizzard overbuffs or over nerfs, and then you have the situations where it's like everyone are using shield tanks or whatever, and then no one is.
Well, it's one of those things too, where it's like if you look at the death statistics and raids and stuff, it's always warriors and paladins at the bottom, and I don't know if that's like what helps them base their buffs off of or what, but it's one of those things where like if you mess up, you're gonna notice that you're gonna die, and that's probably why they're buffing the passives and stuff like.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was gonna go to you, Sense, actually, with if there's any key points, since I say mop forward, that are the better or the best incarnations of different pieces of the puzzle that they've put in, that they have taken out,
Vengeance.
or that they want put.
Bring back Vengeance. No, but like Ravager actually being worthwhile to use would be good. What was it? The Legion artifact gave us the spell reflect, where it reflected all spells during the reflect duration, just didn't get eaten from the first one.
Right.
So that'd probably be a little much now, like with Reaping, you reflect all the stacks from their melee attacks, shit like that. But in general, those are like 2 of the kind of big things that I would like to see be worthwhile. Spell reflect is just kind of right now. Yeah, it's good for reflecting certain boss abilities and doing a bunch of damage, but it lasting the full duration was pretty good.
Lala, you had something you wanted to add to this?
I think just the general like increase to our rage per second, closer to what we had in like Tomb of Sargeras era. The spec just feels a bit slower now than it used to, and overall I kind of understand that is something they wanted to go for. Prot historically was really, really high APM spec. If you go back to like Emerald Nightmare, people were running like 120 APM and stuff like that.
Yep.
Just playing the spec optimally. Right now we're at like 70 something. So for people who have played it a long time, it feels a lot slower, but it still is one of the fastest playing specs in the game. But yeah, I wouldn't mind just a small increase to our rage generation just to see a bit more ability usage.
And actually, let me bring this up because not everyone might realize the APM scaling here. Let's do action per minute. So the Simulation Craft stack, that is 815, and this is the Patchwork stack, which goes through based on the priority list that is put together. This is the current APM layout. Protection Warrior is the most actions per minute on average of any spec in the game at 71 on Patchwork.
Yep. Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Ignore pain off the global is huge for that.
Yep,
Just-
we were like 45, 50 something before the patch. Now we're up to like 70 something. So
That's a little wild. Now, you're saying that's, I don't know. I've always kind of wondered where the perception comes in that people like it when the game is faster, even though I think that World of Warcraft is still one of the fastest MMOs on the market.
without a doubt.
So even when you're in like the high 40s to low 50s, that's still almost an action per second, right? That's still like that's a lot of decisions. So
Yeah.
Yep.
that's
In
still-
my opinion, at the end, towards the end of Legion, when Prot was like, I don't know, like 100 over 100 APM, that was like too fast, honestly. I don't know. Some people enjoyed that, but it just like you're just spamming the whole time,
Right.
and I think that kind of gets a little boring. And now, you know, it's also a little bit misleading to look at that chart and where Prot's at the top, because a lot of specs don't have something that they can press off the GCD like every couple seconds or so.
Right.
So the APM gets inflated by that. And I'd say like Prot now, it definitely is a lot slower, where it's like, I would say it's kind of on par with, I don't know, the average spec in terms of pace or whatever, if you don't consider Ignore Pain.
Right.
And that's just like personal opinion, whether or not you enjoy that. Because I know a lot of people like complained in Legion about how fast Prot was. But then, of course, a lot of people complain now that it's not fast enough. So
It's a weird one. Because I was expecting, so I went to the Dungeon Slice as well, and this one shows Fury at the top. Well, it's Fury, Brewmaster, and Protection are all tied at 67, so just barely over one action per second. And that makes a little bit more sense. I feel like that's almost the upper echelon of how many actions you would use per minute. And even the slowest spec at Frost DK, this is when you actually get into, if you talk to players that are playing Death Knight, Frost definitely has that downtime, which is really funny to me because the current build of Feral Druid isn't the slow methodical playstyle that was the slowest we saw in Legion a lot. So that's a huge shift. But I guess it really depends on what spec you're looking at, because there are ones that are a lot quicker. I mean, I play Havoc and Enhancement myself, so I'm at just barely under one action per second. So it's interesting, though. You did note the Ignore Pain off the GCD, but I mean, Lala, go back on you on that one. How many Ignore Pains on an average, say, boss fight? Like, how often is it weaved? Is it stacked? Is it doing the 2 and 3 Ignore Pains? Is it just kind of like hit all the time now? How does that work with off the GCD?
There's a few variables that depend there. A is like, how much damage are you taking, and are you valuing just doing more damage with like Revenge instead? If you're not tanking at the moment. But in general, like if over the course of like a 6-minute fight or so, you should get, if you're playing defensively, like 40 or so Ignore Pain casts around there. It all just kind of depends on the way you're playing and what the fight is like. If it's AoE, you're going to have more rage per second because you have a bunch of things hitting you. So you're going to Ignore Pain more just to burn rage and cycle anger management faster. So it just depends on what the fight is like, and yeah.
With
on a high,
oh, go ahead, Mark. Yeah.
On a higher damage fight, like Mechantorque, for example, Ignore Pain gets eaten like, in a global or two. So you're basically casting it like every 5 to 8 seconds, where you cast it, it gets eaten, and then when you have the rage to cast it again, you do. But yeah, like Lala said, it really does just depend on the fight. But like now, it's in Ignore Pain usage has always kind of been like that, where you just use it kind of when you can. And there are certain situations where you want to delay it or pull rage or whatever, but like most of the time you're just kind of casting it as you have the rage for it, just to smooth out damage.
Interesting. They definitely the change from I see you, Gorek. The VOD and Stream can't see you right now because I don't have a chat. I see you, but I gotta pull this up. to look at the amount that they changed this, because Ignore Pain was, I believe it was, so yeah, Fight Through the Pain, ignoring 50% of the damage taken, up to the crazy nonsensical formula of total damage prevented. This was also a huge difference from Legion, because wasn't it in 90%?
90, yep.
Right.
So to touch on that a little bit, Ignore Pain's like actual absorb amount is still relatively close to what it was in Legion per cast. The
Okay.
difference is just how fast that absorb gets eaten, right?
Sure.
Instead of you get hit for like 50k, a 90% absorb absorbs 45k of it. You get it for 50k, 50% is only going to absorb 25k, but the actual like shield amount is still close to the same. Ignore Pain is not necessarily any weaker or stronger than it used to be by itself. It's when you include things like missing out on some artifact traits we had and stuff like that, that it gets relatively weaker than it used to be in Legion.
That's what I was making sure. So the attack power coefficient behind the scenes is stronger to keep it relatively the same amount, but now it's just a 50-50 split between your face and the Ignore Pain versus the 90-10 it was in Legion.
Yep.
The compared to Legion, the actual attack power coefficient got like massively nerfed. It used to be like 25, and now it's 3 or so, 2.5 or 3.5. I don't know.
3.5 right now in the database, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, but like what I was saying, like relative to your actual health pool per cast, Ignore Pain provides about the same amount of absorb as it used to.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, that's a thing people kind of hung up on, is the like 90% or ignoring 90% of damage instead of, now it's 50%.
Right.
And people say, oh, Ignore Pain got like massively nerfed, and that's really not the case. Where all that really affects is how fast your absorb depletes. It actually has no effect on the actual amount you're going to absorb in the end.
Now, normally you still pair Ignore Pains up with shield blocks, right? So does it, the fact that it's 50-50, does it help shield block shine, or does it just work better in tandem with it?
Well, basically, whenever there's blockable damage, you need to be having like block up way more than Ignore Pain. That should be your bread and butter, is making sure you're blocking these spells.
Okay.
That was the case even before too, though.
Right.
In terms of a total amount of reduced damage, block would always get you way more out of it than an Ignore Pain cast would.
Yeah, and I guess like with it being 50% now, it's a slight nerf to like huge spikes of damage, because obviously if it was 90%, you'd be absorbing more of that where more gets through now. But it's also a buff. With it being 50%, it's also a buff in situations where you just want more damage moving, because it spreads out the absorb more. But like overall, it really doesn't matter.
And just to get the last little bit and pin the tail on the Ignore Pain, then to move it along, is it still stacks in a way? Is there still like a cap of how many casts it stacks to, with how Blizzard's voodoo math in the background works? Marok, what's the actual?
Yeah, it's 1.3 times the like on cast amount of Ignore Pain. It used to be 3 times, but now it's 1.3. So it is pretty like easy to overcap Ignore Pain and waste Ignore Pain if you're not careful. Like now in BFA with the lower overall rage gen, it's not really an issue. Like you don't really have to be too careful when it comes to overcapping Ignore Pain. Unless you just like press it twice for no reason, but you wouldn't really do that. So it's not that big of a deal that it's 1.3. It is annoying sometimes. And like dungeons, for example, where rage generation is way higher. There's certain times where you just like can't press Ignore Pain, or it's just not going to do anything because you're already capped. But overall, it's fine.
Interesting. So that they put it's the same sort of pandemic effect that say dots have and hots have, the 30% above the max one cast. Okay. Did they do that? I think they did that at the same time, because I think brews, something like for Brewmaster, is similar in that stacking sense of duration now too. So
yeah, they hit Brewmaster, and they kind of changed it for all the tanks in general at that same point, just because of what Brewmaster was able to do, where like your primary active mitigations had a 3 times cap. on its base duration. So shield blocks, if you could cast 3 shield blocks instantly, its cap would be 18 seconds, and you couldn't go higher than that.
Right.
Obviously, you can't go that high anyways because you're limited on charges and cooldown. But
right, yeah, I didn't mean like the 30%. It's like theirs is 3 times, but any other hot or dot in the game only can be it with 30% more after you refresh to not lose. So similar balancing stuff that happens there. All right. But Sense, I want to know, to continue a bit more into the past compared to the present, you brought up Vengeance, which is why I'm going back to on this one, even though I don't...
Yep.
Vengeance is not just a Prot warrior thing, that's a tank thing.
All tanks. Yep.
But was there a previous incarnation of Protection where you felt was the best that's no longer with the spec today? Specifically with the Prot warrior kit? Something you would like, if you could change WoW right now and bring something back from the past or remove something currently, what would you do?
Probably a Vengeance mob tanking. It was like tanks having control over themselves, I think, is the most fun. I think it's fun where if you messed up as a tank and you die, it's completely your fault. It's not fun to you die, you have your mitigation up, so you go look and see who's healing you and all that stuff, which Legion was very much like that. So was Mop, I believe. Mop was not as much, but Legion, I really enjoyed Legion tanking, where if you died, the tank messed up, and that's just I don't know. I think that was way fun.
You think Blizzard swung the pendulum too hard back away from tank agency?
Well, yeah, nowadays, like if you die, it is still a pretty high chance that it's your fault, but it's not one of those things where it's like guaranteed that it's your fault. So it's one of those things you have to look at logs, look at recount, whatever it is that you use to see how you died and why you died.
Yep.
So Lala, how about you then?
I will say, personally speaking, I think Vengeance was a terrible mechanic. I agree. Legion was the sweet spot for me, where tanks had enough of their own self-control into their survivability, where it was really up to you. And I miss that. Sometimes I'll sit at like 30-40% HP for a long time in a fight, and I'm like, I really wish I could do something about this myself, but my health stone's on cooldown. I guess I'm just gonna keep sitting here at this health.
Impending victory?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take it, but I think just Legion overall in a nutshell, like especially like Tumas Sargeras patch Prot Warrior, the amount of rage we had compared to what we were spending on spells felt really, really good. Certain legendaries that we had with it, like the rings, so that we had Vengeance and Devastator or Vengeance and what was the other talent? Booming Voice. So we had both of those at the same time. Felt really good to have both of those instead of having one or the other like we do again now. Because Vengeance feels really satisfying when you're playing it right. Vengeance, the talent, not the mop attack power buff.
That's the one that affected Revenge, didn't it?
Yes, it was. Well, now it is 33% reduced cost on Revenge and Ignore Pain back and forth.
Back and forth in teeter-totter, yeah.
Yep.
Gotcha. No, that was definitely a little fun. They took away that super crazy bursty opener that we had in. I say we because I've played a handful of Protection Warrior in the past, and I did play a bunch. And I did the Protection Warrior Mage Tower. All right. I got some chops, but there was a lot lost in that little nuance, which is funny because now Blizzard's come back in recent interviews, and Ian has said that they have realized the team has realized that taking away too much from the game is not what players like. Who'd have thunk, right?
Shocker.
Yeah, exactly. Who's surprised? But I wonder what they're going to do to curb that in the future here. And then Marok, take us home. What about the good and bad and ugly? Would you want something maybe removed from the Protection Warrior right now if you could?
Removed? Not really. I mean, there's talent. Like, our talents are not, and really have never been in a good spot where you're changing talents, or based on the situation or whatever. Like since WoD, pretty much you run just like one build, like the best build, whatever that is. It's like talent diversity has always been pretty bad for Prot, in my opinion. And yeah, I agree with Lala Sense in that like Legion Prot was kind of the sweet spot. She had like pre 715 Prot and post 715 Prot where they introduced Devastator. And like I would say like with Devastator, and that was probably the most fun iteration of Prot. Although I really enjoy BFA Prot right now as well. I think they're both pretty good.
I miss Focus Rage now that you mention it.
Yeah.
Let's bring Focus Rage back. I missed that shoulder slam, you know?
Pass. Yep. That was like that was when Prot was at like 128 PM or whatever, because you would cycle between Focus Rage and Ignore, and they're both off the GCD. That was pretty fun too.
Yeah, I just missed that shoulder slam. Give me that animation back.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Oh man, why would you even utter those words? That was such a what a terrible thing. Because it wasn't okay. The Prot version of Focus Rage, maybe not that too bad, but it was for the DPS warriors that it was just an absolute blight.
Bind it to scroll wheel and go nuts.
Real bad. Focus Rage was the best ability for Prot and arms. I don't know about this. That caused so many balancing problems on Blizzard's ends, though, for you guys. What an absolute madhouse that was. But yeah. How about, so Lala, you have the MDI up on the other monitor still, I imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Just sort of watch what's happening in the background there. So let's bring up the MDI, the Mythic Plus current scene that is very much in the community's eye right now. Because the Protection Warrior versus Blood Death Knight, and maybe I guess there's a little bit of Brewmaster Monk in there, is currently why Blood DK was so strong, what the community kind of knows. Right? Grips, self-sustain, allowing your healer to DPS more, all that jam. So where does the rise of the Prot Warrior come from, and why is it suddenly this triple melee Prot Warrior comp, right? And I have, so here, I'm setting you up for this, right? So I have bullet points that I had in the notes.
Yep.
Is it a damage thing, like Thunderclap and Avatar? Is it a survivability thing, like Spell Reflect on certain bosses that is super cheesy? Or is it a huge shift to the melee Mythic Plus, like Battle Shout, because raid buffs are fun?
It's a little bit of everything, but mostly it's the damage component.
Okay.
In a lot of cases, what I wouldn't even just say the damage; it's the numbers component. So Prot, both offensively and defensively in most scenarios for Mythic Plus, is the best tank. You're going to take the least amount of damage, you're going to require the least amount of healer attention, and you're going to do the most damage of any of the tanks, right? The exception to that is like crazy bleeds or crazy magic dots and things like that get put on you. So the whole goal of like optimizing Prot right now is all about getting as much damage as you can, because especially unless you're in like very, very top end keys, like 23s, 22s, that kind of level, play wise, you shouldn't be at risk of dying unless something is going wrong with the pull outside of what you're gearing for. But as far as comp goes, I think triple melee would have happened anyways. Rogues being the way they are, that kind of stuff. You know, you see, even if you just go look at like Raider IO and you go look at like top Blood DK runs and stuff too, they're still running with like double Rogue Windwalker or double Rogue Demon Hunter or that kind of stuff. That kind of meta was setting in anyways. Reaping going away, as Nimchip just mentioned in chat, is a big reason that we might see a shift away anyways, depending on how it goes.
Sure.
But Prot really is right now it's the numbers king. Offensively, defensively, as long as you're running the right setup, there's no reason you shouldn't just be the best tank as far as numbers go.
I think the big shift from DK to Warrior is probably like the result of three things. It was Infested going away, because our numbers have always been high compared to everybody else. It's just we never had a chance to shine in these big AoE pulls, because Infested, there's 5 groups. You want to pull 5 groups, but you have to have 5 different CCs to set it up. You don't really have that. So Infested going away, Bastion of Might getting introduced, which is just a huge amount of mastery when you use Avatar for damage, and it gives you an Ignore Pain too. And then, like we were talking about, Ignore Pain coming off the global, which just lets you put more of your globals into damage. So there's those three things together, and I guess the fourth thing, the majority of damage in these dungeons is physical and blockable. So when you can do these huge ass pulls and take way less damage than the DK and do more damage, there's just no reason to go for an AoE grip when you can just thunderclap the world. I think those are probably the 3 or 4 things that really contributed to the shift from, and I think Bone Storm got nerfed or something. There's a few other things that happened to DKs too, so everybody kind of swapped over with the realization.
Yeah, and like Lala said, big part of it is also reaping. And if reaping wasn't a thing, there was just something else instead of reaping, I don't think you'd see nearly as many Pro Warriors. It's just Prot being able to just destroy reaping packs is a huge thing as well.
Yep.
That is definitely part of it. And you guys say reaping is going away. Just to confirm the verbiage here, reaping obviously will change next season, 8.2, like July, August, whenever we actually get the new season. Sure. So we still have a few more months of the current hierarchy here. And also this is more in the 18 to 20 plus key realm, right? You can run whatever you want up to 10 to 15s right now. Doesn't really matter too much.
Oh yeah.
But if you've been following the MDI at all and sort of the Mythic Plus meta, these huge pulls because of time commitments and timing up cooldowns, because you can only ever use your cooldown so many times in under 25, 30 minutes or whatever, right? That's where you see a lot of this. And it's actually funny. I was reading chat, apparently, that you can't see Avatar in the Wowhead talent calculator, and you can't, because I was going to go to some tooltips real quick, and I can't show Avatar, but I wanted to bring up Azerite traits within this discussion, because we're talking about damage, and the hierarchy of Azerite traits. We're looking at the AoE ones, right? Because the big thing we're talking about here is that AoE. Treacherous Covenant being way up there, but not going to be taken because of the damage increase. I guess because I see a lot of everyone running
Most
Bastion
cases,
of Might.
Right.
Yep.
So I guess this kind of ties into the MDI rant I have a little bit, in that the traits you want to run that are ideal for Mythic Plus are damage related, and Bastion of Might is just a bunch of mastery during your burst window. And then the other things you'll see on live servers is tanks running 3 deafening crash traits, which is just increased thunderclap damage.
Yep.
So you run triple Bastion, triple deafening crash. You're just hitting really big thunderclaps all the time, right? On MDI side, because the gear vendors have some Azerite that you can't get at the same eye level on live servers that scale to 415 for the MDI.
What?
You see some different traits, and that is
Blightborn Infusion. Yeah.
Yep. Blightborn Infusion, which is a proc crit chance thing. That's not a class trait. It's just a neutral one that you can pick. Is really good because we value crit really, really highly in M+, because it scales really, really well for damage, and at least defensively, surely statistically, it is our best for damage reduction too. Increased parry chance goes a long way. You get a bunch of crit, you parry a lot of attacks, it's a lot of damage reduction, right? Obviously in raiding it's a little different because you value consistency and there's not as many swings and stuff like that coming in, so you have a higher variable there.
Sure.
But in Mythic Plus, it's the way to go. You want a lot of crit and you want haste to just move everything faster.
Okay. That's the one. I know when we were setting up the show, you had some words about seeing things and the way that people are building on the MDI. But the weird thing, why? First off, I guess that's just, does Blizzard not want the characters in the tournament realm to have all the options to build this optimally? Because why would they not have?
They have more options that we don't have on live servers.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
it's the reverse.
Trinkets
might be a little bit of an exception. I think they Sense mentioned they don't have world boss trinkets.
Yeah, I don't think so. I have to double check, but yeah.
But as far as Azerite gear goes, yes, they have Azerite gear at 415 that on live servers we can't get at 415. right? Like we can only get it like 385 or that kind of stuff.
At least consistently, right? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Well, because Azerite gear doesn't Titan Forge or anything,
Of course. Yeah.
So no way to get that eye level for those pieces, and Blightborn and Fusion pieces are 2 of those. So they'll run, instead they're running 3 times Bastion of Might, 2 Blightborn and Fusion, which gives you on proc like I think like 2600 crit, just about somewhere around there, which is a lot of crit chance. And they still run 1 Deafening Crash. And it's just about, you pop Avatar, you get a Blightborn proc, and your Thunderclaps crit like crazy, and you do super high damage.
The Blightborn Infusion Azerite power then, is that only comes from the World Quest caches, doesn't it? Is that what the issue is there?
I think so. I think
that's where
it might
it's
be
from,
Warfront.
Yeah, I think Warfront.
Yeah.
Oh, Warfront too. Oh. Yeah, it's just the Waycrest Thralls like zone Azerite. Yeah, I'm looking it up over here on the other monitor. So yeah, interesting. Yeah, Waycrest. There's one for Mythic Dungeons, but interesting. That's strange. I thought it was the reverse when I heard you first there, but that's Alliance World Quest caches, Horde in that regard too. Yeah.
Yep. In the MDI specifically, though, what we saw a lot of early on, and more specifically from some of the NA teams, was some setups where they'd run 2 Bloodsport Azerite traits, which increases the flat value of your Ignore Pain per cast and gives you a little bit of Leech for 6 seconds. I'm going to be honest, it's a garbage trait. There's no reason to ever run it. Even defensively, it is a worse option than what you could be running otherwise. There's no good reason for that trait. The other thing that we saw a little bit is a Leech weapon enchant, Siphoning, which, gives you some Leech. And the idea is that they're trying to shore up Protection's weakness for not having self-sustainability and healing.
Okay.
And I mean, most of the people, personally speaking, that I saw trying to do these things were people who hadn't played Protection before, like 8.1, 0.5, and like that kind of shift where Prot started seeing a lot of play in Mythic Plus, as well as running talents like Never Surrender in Motherload, which on live servers, you go through most of the dungeon with Bolster. You have your block for Last Stand, and that's super good. And then you hearth out when you get to the 3rd boss. You change to Never Surrender, you zone back in. I can understand that one. I still don't necessarily. Yes, I still don't necessarily think it's the best play. I think a minute reduced cooldown on Last Stand is equally good in those specific scenarios. But the idea is you swap to Never Surrender because you can't block the 3rd and 4th bosses of Motherload's attacks. And you just have bigger Ignore Pains when you're, taking that damage. But on Tournament Realm, you can't hearth out partway through. So you're playing the first, 2/3 of the dungeon where you get all of your trash percent and the first 2 bosses a lot weaker than you would otherwise be playing. That died off really quick. That died off the first week after, the first day someone did it. But the Leech stuff, you still see from time to time people running Siphoning and Blood Sports and things like that. And it's just not worth it over running A, the higher damage setup, or B, the higher crit setup where you get a lot of parry instead.
I think a lot of the Siphoning has died off for the most part now. There's been a few, but it's not as much as it was that first week. That first week there was quite a few Siphoning blood sport things going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just to I guess expand on that a little, and the sort of reasoning for the whole Leech thing is, obviously Prot does a lot of damage, and if you do a lot of damage, you're going to do a lot of healing for your Leech, but it's, like Lala said, it's just not worth it, because Avatar with Bomb, especially in your Avatar windows, you're already super tanky because you have all that extra mash, you have Demo Shot rolling and whatever else, and you're just way better off with more damage rather than trying to heal through Leech for basically no reason. You're just
siphoning is what, 2% Leech, 2.5% Leech. It's not like it's some huge number or anything, right? Like it's not really that much to be giving up your other enchants for.
It's not a crazy amount of leech. And the other thing is, and this is something I almost wonder if they just don't take into consideration at all. The amount of damage we do relative to our personal health bars is much lower in BFA than it was in Legion. Where in Legion, our average DPS would be about a third of our health, and like raid bosses and stuff like that. Leech was a much more powerful stat because it's that much more of a percent of your health per second, right? Nowadays, we're typically only doing like single target. We're doing like 10% of our health and damage per second, stuff like that, or less than that. You know, Prot's doing like 15, 16k single target if you're really pushing damage, and we have like 350k health. So, you know, we're doing like 5% of our HP, or right around there. It's just a lot less valuable per point of leech than it was even in Legion. So it isn't just that it's just weaker than it used to be, and it isn't worth it over the other things, even if it was that strong before. I
see. Yeah, I was going to go to Sense on this one, too, to sort of expound upon that, because you guys could have went back and forth on it anyway, almost like you can see the notes. But so building the Shield Boy, and as Lala just mentioned, the back and forth on the Leech, and the things you should be staying away from in this regard. So what are the fundamentals then if you are, if you be able to build the Prot Warrior on live, right? Like what are the things that the player should be shooting for, key points?
The biggest thing is being like, that's why I do the whole block and reflectable and all this stuff. Being a pro warrior, you have to be proactive. You can't be reactive. Like a Blood Death Knight, they take the damage, they heal it up afterwards. Like being a warrior, and I think probably to a lesser extent a paladin, you have to know what's blockable beforehand. You have to know like what is going to kill you, what isn't, if you don't have block up. Like on Jaina for ice shards, those are blockable. And if you don't have she'll block up when you're at higher stacks, you're gonna flop. Like that's just how it works. It's one of those things where if you don't plan ahead of time, if you don't know what your damage intake is gonna be, it's gonna show. Your health is gonna be spiky. People are gonna wonder why you're a paper tank or whatever this is, stuff like that. I think that's probably the biggest thing is prepare in advance. Don't just go in blind.
Okay. And then if there was a sort of how you would gear out in that regard, then, so what kind of weapon enchant are we looking at here, in case particularly for the whole leech discussion?
Quick navigation would probably be the best one. I know some people are using deadly for the crit, which probably works out too. I don't think there's going to be it's not going to be that big enough difference between the two. I just wouldn't use siphoning.
Yep, and it is also a stark difference between Mythic plus stats and raid stats.
Right.
Where in Mythic plus you value crit and then haste. In raids, you'll value haste and then mastery. So it all just kind of depends in a purely defensive aspect for both of those, what you're going for.
Okay. How about then, let's building the shield hero of the upcoming 8.2 patch notes on the PTR, at least the initial stuff that we have seen here. I'll hop over this right now. We do have the Unstoppable Force talent. Thunderclap damage will be reduced to a 50% bonus, down from double, 100%. And the developer notes are the Protection Warrior burst DPS with Avatar is extremely high for a tank. This talent was adding more damage than necessary, given that also it decreases Thunderclap's cooldown and synergizes well with certain Azerite traits. This is the only adjustment so far. But Marok, I have to know, is this enough, too much, just enough, too little? Because there's a lot of extra damage coming from it, because Deep Wounds, I imagine, is probably where a lot of this damage comes from as well, and that's not being touched at all yet. So what's the thoughts you guys have on the PTR coming up soon?
Yeah, so in my opinion, I think it's a fair nerf. I think it's reasonable. Is that with it being 50% instead of 100%, that just means 25% less thunderclap damage inside Avatar. And then overall, that it comes out to like about a 6% overall DPS nerf in single target, about like 10-15% nerf in AoE.
Okay.
Just depending on pull size, but it's like usually around 10% or so. So like 10% off your overall damage, it is reasonable in my opinion. Like, I think that's fine. We're still going to do a lot of damage. and haven't touched our survivability yet, which is also makes Prot really strong. So yeah, I don't see it being an issue or anything like that. I think it's fair. It's a fair nerf.
This isn't going to. I have to pull over the talent calculator real quick. This isn't going to open up anything for Dragon Roar or Best Served Cold to suddenly be what you would care about. It's just still Unstoppable Force is too strong with Avatar, right? It's not going to change the hierarchy of talents. You don't think?
There's so much synergy that Unstoppable Force has with other things, like Bomb, and Deafening Crash and all of that. Unstoppable Force is still going to be the go-to for everything, for sure.
Unstoppable Force is the only one that actually like gives you a net rage gain too, right? Because the cooldown reduction or whatever on Thunderclap, where the other ones don't.
Well, Unstoppable Force and Dragon Roar also gives rage, like 10 rage per cast. They actually work out to be about the same. Okay. Unstoppable Force doesn't give a whole lot of rage. It's like an extra 20 rage per minute, which is pretty much the same as Dragon Roar. So like no talents on that row actually do much for survivability, but for damage, it's like Unstoppable Force is way better.
Yep. Right. Okay. It's just that it's a very clear defining point of the Protection Warrior to Thunderclap. And it's been a back and forth ability that you cared about a little bit in the past, and it's very much on the forefront today because of the synergies you can put together with everything else, with Azerite traits and Crackling Thunder, Unstoppable Force, Avatar, and it all sort of coalesces in that regard. Is there anything else you are expecting the 8.2 PTR to wiggle around with maybe other tanks as well? We do have some other bits coming up here with the Outlaw Rogue change. We do have the Guardian Druid mitigation slight update. This won't really help how boring Guardian Druid is to play, but with Iron Fur being cheaper, Mangle generating more rage, and Mangle and Thresh direct damage being buffed, shifting into bear form gives you more rage a little bit for the initial pull. We do have that coming up. We also have the Vengeance Demon Hunter buffs, which I've been told aren't really buffs, so we'll see. They're okay, but it's definitely not enough for all of a sudden Vengeance to skyrocket in. But I mean, tank POV, Marok, what do you still think that adjustments on the horizon still yet? What do you think we still need to see from Blizzard on this?
I think so. One sort of mistake I think Blizzard made with buffing Prot when they did the few times previously is they buffed Vanguard a few times, which is good because that's just passive survivability. And that was kind of one of Prot's issues is like outside of shield block, you just took a lot of damage. It was like dangerous to not have shield block up. And that made the spec pretty punishing. So they buff Vanguard, which is the stamina and armor increase.
Right.
But at the same time, they also buffed shield block. They reduced the recharge time down. It was like 18 seconds base, and now it's 16 seconds base. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of where they made a mistake, and they just shouldn't have done that. I would like to see them kind of just revert that. If they're going to touch our survivability, just revert that change. Just bring shield block back to 18 seconds base. Just reduce our shield block uptime a little bit. I think that would be like a reasonable nerf there as well. And I think overall it's like okay for Prot to do more damage and like be slightly tankier than other tanks. Just because especially for Mythic Plus, we lack like meaningful dungeon utility. Like, there's Ring of Peace, Mass Grip, DHs have sigils, things like that. So, I think if they, with the UF nerf, if they like nerf our survivability slightly, I think we'll be in a good spot.
Right. Yeah, all Prot Warrior does is do damage and stun things. That's all they do. They just stand there, essentially. Yep. Which is, even when you bring up the other block tank, you don't have anywhere near the silence control that the Protection Paladin can bring. So, and right now in a realm, which is interesting to see, that Prot, mostly because the numbers game, because Prot Paladin can control mobs a lot as well, and there's a lot of casts that go off. That's the biggest problem that people talk about with Mythic Plus right now, is that there's so many casts that why range just fell out of the wayside because their interrupts are 24 to 45 seconds long. They can't hurt anything. So I will wonder about that. The Scuttlebutt, once Crucible gets out there and once the next little gear curve goes in and we're going into the Eternal Palace, we might seeing both shield tanks back in raids. That's what I've been hearing. One Prot Warrior, one Prot Paladin.
I believe that. I would say we could probably also expect Brewmaster still in a lot of fights. That's actually one change I'm surprised we aren't seeing any of again is from Old Deer to Dazar'alor, they shifted Monk's stagger scaling for agility.
Right.
I'm kind of surprised we're not seeing that again because their stagger scaling is already back to what it was in Old Deer with Dazar'alor gear.
Right.
And another tier of gear is going to push their stagger scaling even higher. Now, obviously, that's not like actual mitigation in the sense that it gets rid of damage completely, but it makes it even less of a risky class, right? There's even more smoothness to it, no bursting out and that kind of stuff. So I would be surprised if we get to the next tier and we don't see another shift in the agility scaling for stagger.
Yeah, I'm hoping these initial changes that they're posting are like just the first look, the first glance of what we're to see to come, whatever.
Yeah.
Just so it's like just minor things, not any knee-jerk reactions. Kind of let them float out there, see what people think, and then we'll probably get some more. Like when the PTR comes up, we'll probably get some more changes, see what is actually coming. I think these are fine for the first like little glimpse of what's coming, but I definitely hope there's more coming down the pipeline.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sure that 8.2 PTR comes up this week as I'm sitting here on the Sunday the 14th, right? So we're going to see this week sometime, Wednesday, Thursday, most likely. And it's going to be a 2-month PTR, I'd imagine. If this is being touted by the community at large as the soft reset to Battle for Azeroth, right? Which is more or less what we're looking at here on many different levels. And I mean, HOA 2.0, the 2 new world zones, right? New dungeon, new raid on the horizon, all this stuff that is sort of going to clean up potentially all these little things. But no major class changes. So we'll wait and see.
Wait and see.
Yep. Give the feedback in the proper channels. Don't just go to Reddit and make angry threads. That does nothing. Maybe it does. Who knows?
I made one big Reddit post and it was awful close to what I said in the post that they did for changes.
Oh, you predicting the future. Are you a wizard? I thought you were a warrior. What's going on here?
That was back for 8.1, actually. It was the
8.0 mage.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hey, we aren't supposed to tell anyone about that yet.
Sorry.
Dang.
Forgot.
Well, if you in chat right here have questions for a guest that want to spur it on to the discussion, you can do that right after this little mid-show commercial break where I'm going to ramble on a couple of things so my guests can step away and take a short little break if they need to. But again, if you miss any part of the live show, of course, everything gets archived over to the show's YouTube channel, which if you're watching on Twitch right now is linked down below. Or if you want to watch the actual archive itself, if you're listening audio only on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play Music, then it's just Final Boss WoW over on YouTube. But of course, another big shout out that if you want to support the show, the stream, and everything in between, here are some ways to do so. It's not your first rodeo, but maybe you didn't know about these on the back end. And if you want more of the show, that exists over on the Final Boss TV Patreon page. You can see sort of how the shows are put together. There are behind-the-scenes shows that I put on that you can sort of give me direct feedback. We have one of those coming up in the future here really soon. And, of course, you have the Patreon BTS podcasts that are off-script, just extra nonsense that we come up with from behind the show. We go into, there's like a 2-hour just banter session between Preach and myself going out of Legion into BFA. And it's funny to hear about all the things that we had talked about back then that we were curious about and concerned about, but we have seen either come to fruition or be fixed in the game right now. Those are all over there. But if you don't just want the digital stuff and you're more into the actual physical things that you can do to support what I do here to keep the show rolling forward. If you haven't heard yet, I have one more announcement in the future that'll come up in the next couple of weeks here, hopefully. But Final Boss TV, what I do here on the internet, is now partnered and sponsored with Corsair. The links are down below. So you can bring out, I need an emote for like Final Shill Boss TV or Shill Boss TV, something along those lines. But I mean, I have been waiting for a very long time to put something together very official with a company out there that I trust. The whole rig that I'm actually doing the stream on, that I've been streaming on now for over 3 years, is very, very, very Corsair forward. So if you are looking to get any upgrades for your computer, bits and bobs, pieces, and parts for your next build, then go check out the link down below, and you can do so through Corsair, and then, of course, you support what I do here on the stream. As well, there's also a link next to them. There is also Elgato, and Elgato is part of the Corsair family, which specializes in a whole bunch of extra little pieces and parts for broadcasters, or the one thing I wanted to bring up too, their capture quality stuff and their extra peripherals in that regard, as well as their incredibly popular Stream Deck for controlling your computer through macroable, completely LED customizable control pad. You can do whatever you want with this if you work in audio, or you work in editing, or you work in Photoshop a lot, After Effects, that kind of stuff. You can check out all of their products over on Elgato as well. And again, links are down below the stream, or if you're watching on YouTube, links are down below in the description box as well. And that all goes to keep me doing what I'm doing here. So all that, of course, right here on the stream. FinalBoss.tv is the actual website page. We have some more facelifts for that coming up in the future. And announcement sides, we are still working on the back end for the epic WoW Battles of History Season 2, the Alliance versus Horde. That is going to be a big deal. That is myself and the Alliance versus Brutal and the Horde. It'll be shoutcasted live by Taliesin and Evitel. There'll be prizes and giveaways. We're doing stuff with Wowhead. It'll be a 2 Sunday event coming up here. We have to sort of time it between raids. So we were planning on doing it this spring to summer, but then Crucible of Storms is coming out. So yeah, but that depends on how long we have between Crucible and the Eternal Palace, which will be probably August. So somewhere in there in the summer. And you can join us with that, because obviously Brutal and I need up to 29 other players to do things in the game. So keep an eye out on Twitter and stuff for that, for news on the epic WoW Battles of History. And thank you very much for sticking with us over the years. You can go back and watch the old VODs of that with my old co-host Anafail and Coltrane for the original series of that. Oh, just over on YouTube. It's probably pretty bad compared to stuff we put out now, but, you know, hey, blast from the past. Should be fun. Chat, Q&A time. I like how I say that, and a question gets posted. You're on the ball with that one. But, all right, guess we all good here. You guys ready to field some questions and do a little FAQ section for the second half of the show?
Yep.
Let's do it.
So, Marok, start us off here real quick. The first question I have here is that, so what about this 100% avatar uptime in patch 8.2?
So in with the new Heart of Azeroth system with the essences and such, there's one of the essences, I forget what it's called, Vision of Perfection, I think.
I do believe that's
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the minor power. So it, every spec like can get this essence, and just what it affects depends on your spec. And for Prot, it reduces the cooldown of Avatar by 16.5% and increases your versatility. And then the major power is you have a chance, like spells and abilities have a chance to activate Avatar for 8 seconds, and then when that happens, cooldown of Avatar is reduced by 15 seconds. So basically, what that means is just a lot of Avatar uptime. If you assume that the cooldown reduction on the major power when it activates is off the like remaining cooldown and not the total, we're gonna have something like 85% Avatar uptime with that essence, which is like pretty insane, and that's gonna make like Bastion of Might even more powerful. That's a lot of mastery for like almost the whole time you're fighting something. It's just going to be super, super good. I would be really surprised if they don't either nerf that or actually change it to something else, like non-Avatar, because that's going to be pretty overpowered.
Yep.
It has to be, yeah, that essence. Now, this is interesting. I don't want to tangent too hard. There's a lot of questions popping up in chat right now. But it's the Assurance of Consequence, again, from Mop. It's the Convergence of Fate from Elyson to Nighthold. And every expansion has to have a cooldown reduction interaction, it seems like. And some of them have been incredibly powerful. Other ones have been like, meh, for certain specs. But this essence is really powerful. But some of the other ones are also really OP. And you can only have one of the majors. So I think they're kind of trying to... The problem is that the cooldown reduction is on a minor. So I wonder if they might flip-flop that. Because there's no way every DPS and tank is going to splash this. There's no way they're not going to. It's super easy. It's going to be tied behind getting Gladiator in Arena. Watch. Uh-oh.
Ooh.
Mm.
Please no.
Please
I'm
no.
curious, like, I think you guys know this, but like I'm looking on Wowhead at the essences, and it's listed like that essence that reduces the cooldown is listed under tanking. Can
tank only.
every spec use every essence, or is it like tanks
well,
only?
This is the thing. That information was pulled from Ted's live stream and his screenshots. There are certain ones in the tank column that are flagged incorrectly that should be the generics.
Oh, okay.
So we just don't know yet. If it's tank only, we'll have to see. But there's like way more in the tank column than healers and damage dealers. But there should be a balance. They should all have the same amount, roughly. So we'll have to wait and see. But that one's wild. That's why we'll have to wait. So how about... is Bulwark still the default meme shield, or has an artifact skin replaced it?
Is that
The Mage Tower one.
Is that a transmog question?
That's it.
That is a transmog question.
It's a transmog question. I gotta weave it in here. Come on.
I mean, I it's hard not to say the Mage Tower one, right? Like that shield is just so beautiful. I personally actually use the evolved like base skin a lot because I really like the sword on that one. But
the Gladius, essentially what it is,
yeah, it looks really, really good. But other than that, Legion Breaker all the way.
That's actually one of the FAQ questions that I had in here is which artifact appearance is your favorite and why is it the Chain Chomp? That's really good.
Cool. The flail, yeah.
Yeah, the flail is very good. How about... Ooh. I don't know if I want to ask Corey's question here. This is... How would you make Ravager a viable talent? He uses both the word Ravager and the V word.
You know, I've actually I've thought about this before, and what I think they should do is move Ravager to another tier. Like, put it on the tier with Unstoppable Force, like replace, I don't know, Vesture of Cold, for example. And I don't know, it would still be bad unless they like buff the damage, but it might be good in certain situations where you're doing like massive pulls and it's like necrotic or something. You can just parry everything. Something like that.
Affected by anger management too, if you put it down there or something like that.
Yep.
It's just like it's in the wrong place.
In the wrong place.
In the talent tree.
Yeah.
It just does not compete with anger management or heavy repercussions.
Yeah, I mean, both anger management and heavy repercussions are just really integral to what you do as a Prot warrior. And Ravager's just like, you forget either of those and you just throw a whirling axe for 8 seconds or 7 seconds or whatever. It's just, all right, cool. Yeah.
Yep.
Blades of Light and whatnot. But
Ravager used to be good, and like WoD, he took Ravager, he did a lot of damage. And not anymore.
They decided it's not allowed to do damage. A cast of Ravager now does less damage than a single cast of Revenge. Like, the entire duration of Ravager does less than one Revenge. It's really bad.
Wait, I gotta let me look at some spell coefficients here. This is actually the funny part. So Revenge, I mean, he's not wrong. Revenge is actually scaled at 45.9% attack power as the frontal cone. Ravager, a tier 100 talent, a 60-second cooldown, is only 44.3% attack power. So it is quite literally just less attack power scaling on a 1 minute cooldown versus a core ability that has higher attack power scaling. That seems strange.
It's been that way since like Legion now, right? It's been multiple years
Yep.
where it's just been garbage.
Huh.
Just awful.
Those kind of talents to me always come back around that they seem very rotational changing, and almost all the rotational changing talents should be like on your 15. That's your first like exciting ability. Almost should go back up there. I don't know.
Play some Impending Victory with it.
Hey,
Yeah.
Impending Victory is strong.
Replace Impending Victory. Do it.
Well, Impending Victory shouldn't be on your 15. It shouldn't be on your 15 talent. It's a heal. Why is it on like DPS talents? Whatever.
And Prot talents make me sad. There's just so many,
Aw.
so many
Wasted
like dead
potential.
talents. Yeah.
Aw, yeah. How about let's see. I'm not gonna watch that Marok clip. That sounds like bait.
You can watch it. It's if you want to, you don't have to.
I don't know
It's not
about
bait, though.
this.
It's just me dying on Jaina.
Oh, well, okay. Well, that's we've all done that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Are there any dungeons you can justify running RF in?
So RF is, I assume he's talking about Reckless Flurry, which is a Fury trait that gives you extra damage on your auto attacks and reduces the cooldown of Recklessness. Obviously, we don't have Recklessness, so that part doesn't do anything. But the extra auto attack damage actually adds a lot of meaningful single target DPS. Early on in BOD, we actually saw some RF memes popping up in logs where, people run like double or triple RF. It does, like 10-15% of your damage depending on how many of the trait you have.
Sure.
And it adds a lot. It even got to the point where people were trying to run Devastator with it, and, just being all about getting strong auto attacks, basically.
Yeah.
And just filling as many globals otherwise with Shield Slam and Thunderclap as possible. But I think now if you look at top logs, they're pretty much all, dominated by triple Treacherous Covenant.
Treacherous Covenant, yeah.
Yeah. It's less about RF now, just because the raw strength from Treacherous Covenant is so strong.
Well, you're talking about Treacherous Covenant in raids and talking about doing boss damage. There's a question that came up directed at Sense. Now, I didn't research this, so I'll be totally honest, but apparently you have a few rank 1s in BOD and in Uldir.
It has a lot of them.
Yeah? So as a Prot warrior, so how much is doing that much damage a hindrance to your survivability in those raids?
Well, here's the thing, because I lead the guild I'm in, and I never do anything that's gonna potentially cause me to die, cause us to wipe, anything like that. So if I end up getting rank 1s because of it, that's like great. So for me, it's never about like trying to push where you're gonna die and not die and stuff like that. It's just getting the fight done, doing as much damage as you can without even being close to dying. Sometimes I use like Treacherous Covenant and stuff like that. It just comes down to being familiar with the fight and knowing what you can and can't get away with. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really ever go like some people like go out all out with these cheese strats for keeping mobs alive longer, for more people to thunderclap and all that. We don't do that. It's just do the fight, don't die. If you get rank 1s, that's just cherry on the top.
Okay. It's funny that you bring that up, but then earlier in the segment of the show, you brought up that you want Vengeance back, which was kind of degenerate. How many of you still have your sit macros?
Oh yeah. Well, for Jaina.
Yeah.
But,
Had to use it on Jaina. We brought it back out.
I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. My main tank was working. We're really close. Probably have Jaina tomorrow, but we had to bring back and talk about the sit macro again recently, and I immediately got flashbacks to Heroic Le Shen on the pull when you'd want to sit and turn around and get slapped in the back to max your vengeance for tank damage to beat threat on everyone else because you're unloading super hard on Heroic Le Shen at the start of the fight so fast. Oh man, it's a fun fight, but man, a little bit of PTSD. But
good times.
Yeah. Here's the follow-up, I guess, to the other bit you brought up with RF and Devastator. Do you think Devastator should be baseline? And if so, what should happen to Devastate?
If it gave Rage and Legion, right? Yeah, it gave Rage and Legion every time you're auto attacked. It doesn't now. I think if you make it baseline and it gives rage again, I'd be fine with it. But in its current iteration, probably not. I don't know.
I personally wouldn't want it to be baseline just because I really don't like playing specs that are or aren't GCD locked. I think having empty globals is not fun. And like back in Legion, when you ran Devastator, it was okay for the most part because you always had something to cast. Like you had the rage to support just like filling like potentially empty globals with revenge or something. But with how Prot is now, if they did make Devastator baseline in its current form, I like in my opinion, I don't think that would be very fun just with the empty globals. But yeah, I don't know. They would need to buff it though if they were to make it baseline for sure.
Yeah, that was the big change that I noted when I was doing all of my spec testing is they moved Devastator and took the rage off of it.
Yep, I think even if they weren't to make it baseline or anything, if it was just to stay where it was, I think it could still use the rage on hit back. Maybe not 5 like it was. You know, you could even put it like 3 or 2. But it's never going to be like competitive with Booming Voice, which, you know, gives a damage amp that you can line up with your high damage windows on top of giving you a burst of rage at the same time. Whereas Devastator is just going to be slightly more consistent, pure single target DPS at the cost of no extra rage gain whatsoever, outside of a extra shield slam here or there. It just needs the rage on hit back. Otherwise, it's never going to be picked.
Right. Because they slotted it down here into the 90 tier, and they're all sort of damage-oriented talents. So that makes sense, but they're not just damage because Vengeance is the rage cost reduction teeter-totter for Ignore Pain and Revenge, and Booming Voice is the generate full rage on demo shout. So Devastator is just auto attacks do damage and give you a chance to reset Shield Slam, sure, but that's not a direct rage gain on the ability like the other two are. So that's a weird one.
Devastator, people run Devastator for like single target damage if they're trying to parse or whatever, because it is good for that, and that's about it though.
Okay.
Like when you look at rage generation, Booming Voice is just better, just flat out better in all situations compared to the other two.
Are any of the three of you going to be dabbling in Classic when it comes out?
Yeah, I'll play it. I'm not going to play Warrior, though,
a
actually.
little bit, maybe, not that much.
Well, the question that came up in chat is that do you guys plan on making Prot Warrior info available for WoW Classic? And or my follow-up is, are you going to try to make it work in WoW Classic? Because that's the real test. Because you don't actually play Prot Warrior in Vanilla Classics. I don't know if you guys were going to bring information up to the forefront on that one.
I'm not. Nope.
Oh.
I probably won't. I'll probably like play it a little bit, but you know, I've played vanilla before, played private servers, and I know how vanilla is, and it just like, I mean, vanilla just kind of sucks, honestly, when it comes to like gameplay or
like
whatever else. So it's
I agree for the most part.
It's not something that I think most people probably who like Mythic rating now are probably not going to be interested in playing vanilla a lot.
Yeah.
I plan on playing it, but I plan on not playing a warrior this time around. I'm gonna play like a priest or something just to goof off on classic.
Something super different.
Definitely not. Yeah, but I'm not gonna bother like, you know, putting classic information out there because it's all out there somewhere. You just gotta find it.
So we went over this a little bit here, but I guess I can bring this back up just because I want to put it in the FAQ section. Is because some of these are not really targetable the same way, but I don't know who of you wants to answer the hierarchy on Azerite traits, like the top 3, just to go back over that again real fast. Who wants that?
You want.
Yeah, cool guy.
So you want one deafening crash like always, because after the first one you don't get any more extension on demoralizing shout. it's just increased thunderclap damage after your first deafening crash trait. And deafening crash, the first one that you get, is by far the biggest increase to survivability.
Okay.
And then you basically, after that, for raids, you want like Bastion of Might and Brace for Impact. Both are pretty good for raids. And then for Mythic Plus, you want just Bastion of Might. And then like if you can get, like you can do three Deafening Crash, 3 Bastion of Might. If you do, you can run like 1 Deafening Crash, 3 Bastion of Might, and then I don't know, like say Iron Fortress for the rest. All of the prod traits are good except Callus, pretty much. So like it doesn't really matter if you aren't able to get 3 bomb or whatever, because they're all pretty decent. But yeah, it's like Deafening Crash, bomb, and then BFI for raids or IF for M+.
Interesting. So I'm looking at the hierarchy here, and the Wowhead guy put together. Callous Reprisal is actually in the higher ones, essentially.
Is that for the M+ guide?
This is just
no,
the Azerite trait layout. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just wrong.
Yeah. You're never in Mythic Plus. You'll likely have Callous Reprisal stay stacked on stuff, but
Sure.
like in raids or single target situations or low target situations, you're not going to be able to keep Callous Reprisal stacked without sacrificing like either Ignore Pain uptime or other stuff like that. So it is competitively just much weaker than the other traits you could choose that have good efficiency without losing something else.
Okay. The question that came up in chat is this website, Tank Notes. I believe that's what you're looking for. That'll be in the description box on YouTube as well. So, yeah. There was a question. I don't know. I feel like some of these are bait about the world's the best prot warrior in the world? Question mark.
I mean,
Floody, yeah.
I think it's worth a shout out, kind of. So Floody, as a guy I kind of respect a lot in the 2-day scene, because I also raid in a 2-day guild. That dude plays Prot Warrior very, very well in terms of like the raid context. He always, like, whenever I go look at logs and I see what he did throughout a fight, it's like he knows what he needs to do to help the raid as a whole have the easiest time on that fight. Back on Argus, he started the whole 100% mastery build that I also used for Argus progression, which was really good because you could guarantee crit block every single scythe. You didn't have to cool down even all the way to the 5th scythe. You just use shield block and that was it. So you could free up your cooldowns to use at other high damage moments or situations. He was, like Bastu said, world first Prot Warrior for Gahoon, and he was lucky that tier. I was really close.
Was he using Spell Reflect on the Bursting Swords, though?
No, I don't think any of us were at that point. Not until we were on farm.
Sense you didn't let it. They don't want to know. Dang.
Nope.
Dang. That was so funny, though. I saw that clip of Max doing it. He soaked 2, I want to say, and 2 or 3 in that little clump. And that was some pretty good damage. And then I think it was that reset. Blizzard was like, oh.
Yeah, people started bringing like 2 Prot Warriors and just sprint potting, running around. So yeah, it's a little much.
How about this one that Marok wanted me to add into the FAQ section? What's the deal with block rating and critical block, though? Potential forehead emoji.
Yeah, so there's this thing that's been kind of floating around about like a mastery soft cap or block soft cap, where so I guess for a little context, the way block damage reduction works is you can't reduce more than 85%. So like crit blocks are double the block damage reduction than just normal blocks. So like if your block gave you 30% DR on block, a crit block would be 60%. And you can't go over 85% at caps there.
Mhm.
So if you had like 45% normal blocks, your crit blocks would still be 85%, not 90. So there's this thing that's like this thing floating around where if you don't want to, if you go over the 85%, then that's where you don't want mastery anymore or whatever. And that's just like not true. There's like people are talking about the soft cap that really doesn't exist, because even if you do, it really doesn't matter. Like crit blocks are still really good, and it's just like this tiny bit of percentage that you're losing, and it makes essentially no difference. So it's just this thing that's wrong, basically.
And more mastery is always more attack power, which is more ignore pain and more thunderclap damage. So,
well, I think the big thing is it's not the mastery specifically. It's like like the block rating on your shield plus Azeroth traits. So like,
okay,
if you have Iron Fortresses and Brace for Impacts and stuff like that, you might have like 47, 48% base block value, which obviously is overcapped for critical blocks. That's still worth it. There's not a point where you get to like, the 42.5 base block value that you're like, okay, I want to stop here. It's still worth going past that, because your base blocks are still going to be the majority of your blocks, and it's still worth bumping up that block value.
Okay.
It's still going to be worth more as a trait than the other traits defensively.
All right. That makes a lot of sense, because that just in the way that you have to base your sort of your baseline on how much damage you're going to smooth, because you can't always what's the word I'm looking for here? You can't juggle your damage smoothing on RNG crit blocks, because they're not going to be what you're going to teeter-totter on all the time. So how
Bring
about
back Notharian's Fury.
Oh, well, you say
I
that.
miss that ability.
Yeah?
I miss it.
What do you think about Prot Warriors DPS being considered or as the spec is, our utility? Is that something Blizzard should maintain? Should utility be added for if some reason the damage is over nerfed in the future? Kind of a button hook onto the discussion we had before the break, where your damage is sort of your big deal, because all you have is just a stun, right? You have stun and you have mobility, right? With intercepts, heroic leaps, that kind of stuff. But
I think it's kind of a slippery slope with what you can do with that, because if the damage is too high and you have too much utility, then it's like an opposite problem. But then they knee-jerk nerf you and it gets worse. Like, our utility isn't that bad. We have AoE fear. Like, we can safeguard a lot. A lot of dungeons are good for safeguard, like King's Rest. That's just the free 30% DR on the spit gold on the first boss, the bleed on that third council boss. You can like intercept the shot on Eudora in Freehold, so that if someone gets targeted twice in a row, they don't die, because you take the shot for them. There's a lot of little things like that. Like, you can spare off like so much stuff on trash and all this. There's a lot of little stuff that adds up to utility. It's just not as flashy. Like, say you have a Blood Death Knight and a mob is sitting in a Sanguine, an archer shooting. You can't move him. You see him grip it out, and it's a huge deal, because you notice that Death Knight gripping something out. You don't really notice like a spell reflect as much on a trash group or an intercept, so that a person doesn't get hit by that or whatever. It's a lot of little things, but we have more than people think, is my main takeaway from that.
I definitely notice the battle shouts when I accidentally always knee-jerk interrupt things that my tank says, I'm going to get this next one, let it... Oh. Yep. Yeah, no, I noticed that. That's the one thing that comes up in this back-and-forth teeter-totter of raid buffs, and probably why Blizzard felt that they had to give Warrior the battle shout back, even though that's the one thing I would remove from the game this instant if we could. All 5 of those just get out. But that's the one thing I think that comes around in the community perception. And it's an interesting question due to the fact of how prevalent Prot Warrior is now in MDI, but that's mostly a damage thing. So we'll have to see. How about using Devastator makes tanking with 2-hander easier, since Devastate... Wait. Northern Man, what do you... Using Devastator makes tanking with 2-hander easier, since Devastate needs shields, Without shield slam and shield block, could you tank BFA dungeons?
No.
No.
No, definitely not.
Oh, okay. I see what's going on.
I have definitely tanked a boss with a broken weapon and lived.
Oh.
And successfully tanked it.
Uh-huh.
I have not tanked a boss with a broken shield and successfully lived it. Very key differences there.
Okay. Yeah. And then, is this the... I don't know about Jason's question. 3 Gathering Storm plus Ravager, the next big meta change.
No, ain't gonna happen. Anger management is just too dang strong.
Yeah. Because what is... I gotta look that one up. What is that? That's a trait, right?
It's when you use Blade Storm, which also works for Ravager because in the other specs, Ravager replaces Blade Storm.
Ah, so it's an arms trait then.
Yes, it gives you increasing strength over the duration of it, and for like 6 seconds after. Which, I mean, it's a lot of strength, but
yeah. Okay, then. I'm gonna pull up the talent calculator here real quick. And Marok, you said earlier in the stream that there's sort of a cookie cutter build, which always exists, right? People are like, I can't wait for vanilla to come back so I can make different, but you're not going to make different builds. There's one build for every class. Okay.
Yep.
Gosh, don't even, anyway, what's the sort of the standard El Clasico build right now in BFA patch 8.1.5 for the Protection Warrior, Marok? Walk me through it.
So for the tier 30 and 75 tiers, those are like kind of personal preference because it's just utility. So those can be whatever, really. In most situations, Crackling Thunder or Bounding Stride, but like Sense said, there's plenty of uses for Safeguard too, and then 75 tiers the same way. Like all 3 can be useful. So for 15 Into the Fray, you just take Into the Fray pretty much all the time. Punish is like can be good if there's not a lot of blockable damage, but there really hasn't been anything like that so far where it would be worth taking Punish over Into the Fray. And especially for the damage portion of it, Into the Fray is just better. So yeah, Into the Fray, then like Crackling Thunder most of the time, especially for dungeons. Bounding Stride's good on like Rosticon, and a couple other fights. And then Unstoppable Force, of course, just for the increased thunderclap damage, reduced cooldown. And then Bolster is the go-to. Never Surrender just kind of sucks. And then Indomitable, if you're a new player or just not very good at using Last Stand at a good time, like Indomitable would be an okay choice. But Bolster is just way better if you use it correctly. And then, Rumbling Earth or Stormbolt, generally speaking. A lot of people run Stormbolt in Mythic Plus. It's really good for specific stuns on certain mobs that need to be stunned. Rumbling Earth is still good as well, though. So either one there. And then Living Voice provides the most rage for the other 2, and then Anger Management is like super, super good. Just because it affects Avatar and demoralizing Shout. It just gives you a lot of damage and survivability through that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The only talents you really ever change are those utility rows, like 30 and 75. You never really take anything else.
Yep. That's what I've seen echoed out there. The old booming voice combo and opener you used to do in Legion was crazy. Because I have footage of myself doing that in the end of Legion, because then when I started testing going into BFA, that whole thing got changed because of the GCD changes and the cooldown moving and stuff like that. So that was ridiculous, though. That opener was probably one of the most button-pressy cast sequences, I think, of any DPS spec I've ever played, was when you tank
Battle Cry, Demo, Trinket, Shield Slam, Shield Slam, Shield Slam, Shield Slam, Shield Slam, Shield Slam, Shield Slam.
In Taurus, when we had those tier bonuses, like I think it was the tier 21 2-piece where Battle Cry, Mage Shield Slam have no cooldown. You just spammed it. That was fun, but kind of dumb at the same time.
So how about we'll go around the corner here on all three of you, and then we'll end with some closing shout-outs and soapbox time. Because this question is interesting to me. What's probably the most miserable fight to be a Prot Warrior on in recent time? Maybe the last expansion or two. And compared to the most fun to be a Prot Warrior on. Sense, I gotta go with you. You know all the spell reflecting nonsense. What you got? Best fight, worst fight?
Most miserable.
Yeah.
Probably Star Augur or Croesus. I would probably go with Star Augur. Like in like the item of appropriate gear for the instance. Because back then spell reflect still wasn't 50%, right? I don't think.
Yep.
And it was just the vast majority of guilds doing that boss were solo tanking with a Guardian Druid, just because of Mark of Ursol, I think it was called.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably the most miserable experience. I went Fury for it. Main reason I did that is I solo tanked Guarm at the start of in TOV, so we just traded off, and she solo tanked Star Augur. Most fun fight, it's probably tied. I really enjoyed Kill Jaden tanking it. Like using your artifact at the proper time on the last couple of stacks of Fell Claws is super satisfying if you do it right. That and Agrimar both I think are probably super fun with how much stuff you could block, and like you could take both of those tank what were they called on Agrimar? Yeah, that's it. You could take both of those without a sweat, and it was super satisfying to do that as well.
Lala, how about you? Most miserable versus most fun?
Most miserable, probably Croesus for me. I actually played a Brewmaster for our first Croesus kill. And then after that, I went back to my Warrior because I knew I was going to play my Warrior on later fights anyways. But I sat for Star Augur too, which turned out to be a mistake because our trial tank at the time was horrible, and I should have just tanked instead. That's my own mistake, though. Most fun, I think Argus. You know, it was one of those things where when you're in farm for a while, you try and do goofy stuff now and then. So I'd always tell my co-tank, I'd be like, hey, let me just see how many sites I can take today before I die.
Right.
And so we'd do goofy stuff like that where I'd just go to 16, 17, 18, 19 site stacks and then wouldn't have shield block or anything up, and I'd be like, oh, I'm probably dead here. And then I'd get a lucky crit block and go one higher. Be like, oh, okay. So,
nice.
It was a lot of fun.
Marok, how about you?
Yeah, I can agree with Sense and Lala on the worst fights being like Croesus and Star Augur. Because back then the Warriors did not deal with magic damage well and just got rocked on those fights. And for me, like Argus was really fun. Agrimar was really fun. Actually, going back a little further, I really liked Ursoc for some reason. I thought Ursoc was really fun. It was like one of the earlier bosses, but I liked how the taunt swaps worked on that fight. And then I don't know, just kind of a fun boss. And let's see, yeah, that's kind of it. There's nothing in BFA so far that has been like exceptionally fun or that stands out. Honestly, they're all just kind of whatever. Like it's all just swap at X stacks or whatever. There's nothing too memorable from any of those raids.
The one thing I think is funny, you all mentioned Star Augur, and that mechanic is back on Jaina, where the tank has to essentially be part of the clearing process of another mechanic, which I think I brought up on Star Augur being actually one of the interesting points of them giving the tank more than just swap at X stacks, move the boss here moments. And I thought that was a fun one, but it's
that part of it was definitely cool. It was just the constant magic damage and just getting railed. That wasn't the fun part.
Absolutely zero blockable damage is not an ideal time for a warrior.
Right. I like that. Oh, come on. Chat brings up Zool. Yeah, because the damage doesn't matter, though. That was so pad happy. That was nonsense.
It was fun, though. It was fun to just be like top of the meters, just because you get to pat on all the Krogs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. I'm actually looking at so every couple of raid tier, once there's a break in, my guild usually goes back and does like full sweeps of everything leading up to. So I'm actually interested to look at before Eternal Palace comes out, going back through everything again and dunking past raid content. that'll be interesting to see how different things are going to feel in about a month and a half, 2 months from now, to go back through BOD or go back through Uldir. I don't know if we'll go back through Crucible because Unad is tuned at 425 or 420 eye level, I guess. He's going to be a little spicy.
Joy.
Yeah, a little bit, but... And then I guess, yeah, take us out of them. And Marok, I'm going to start with you to go in reverse order. Do you have any closing shout-outs or anything you want to end with? Any soapbox points for the protection warriors out there and communities they're in? This is your time. Do with it what you will.
Not really. I guess one thing that I think Prot more than others always kind of suffers from is community perception. And at the beginning of BFA, you know, Prot, I would say, was regarded as like a bad tank spec.
Sure.
And they weren't. Like, they were fine. I would say they were pretty balanced, actually. So I don't know. It's kind of unfortunate when that kind of thing happens, and wish people would be more open-minded and kind of understand that, you know, just because something's perceived as bad or whatever doesn't necessarily mean it is. Or the other way around. Like, if something's perceived to be really good, it might not actually be as good as people think it is. It's just stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of it. It's like, you know, I think the nerf that we just got on UF is like minor enough where it's not gonna like sway people's perception to think that Prot's super bad now. But you know, if the nerfs were more substantial or whatever, we'd still be fine. But I think it would kind of go back to people thinking that Prot's bad or whatever. So that kind of thing is just like, it's unfortunate when that happens. I'm
being goaded by chat by saying you should shout out your guild, WTF.
Yeah. All right. I like to give a shout out to my guild, Potent. We're still dying to Jaina. That's unfortunate, but
same.
Maybe we'll kill it. I don't know.
I gotcha. I'm at 13%. Where are you at?
Not anywhere close to that.
60% or something.
Oh no!
Yeah, we're having a bad time. I think we got to like 45% or something. Not too good.
We're quite literally on like the last. We're on the Ray bait move pivot burn to 13 to 5.5. So we're right there. That's tomorrow for us.
Yeah.
We'll see. This consistency.
That fight sucks.
Get that bread.
I hate that fight.
Yeah, I think that's a special mention for the miserable boss as a tank is Jaina. Just trying to move her and all that shit. She had a very unfun boss to tank.
Yep.
Lala, how about you for closing shout out, soapbox remarks, or what you got?
Shout out to my guild, obviously, Lethal, a bunch of cool dudes. I really love raiding there. I became the GM of it after Uldir, and we're gonna keep going strong. So let's go us in 8.2 and onwards. Other than that, thank you, Bay, for having me on here. Thanks, Marok, for always including me in fun Prot stuff.
Yep.
Sounds good. Short and sweet. Sense, how about you?
I'll just shout out my guild too. It's nerfed. I've been there since end of Wrath now, and I took over GM in start of Cataclysm, end of Cataclysm. 3 nights a week. If you want to apply, go there, nerf.com. And keep it short and sweet too. That's about it. Okie
dokie. No big disclaimers to throw out there to the communities or anything like that. All right. Well, I'll take that. That's not a big deal. I will then hit the ceremonial button that determines when the show ends, which is this one right here. So thank you very much for tuning in to episode number 186 of Final Boss TV on the 14th of April. We're still in patch 8.1.5, just looking at the 8.2 PTR on the horizon. We'll, of course, be updating things in the future because I know the Heart of Azeroth 2.0 is going to be crazy, but of course, just stay tuned to the Skyhold Discord channel so you can know about what is changing because some of those essences are a little good. But back around again, you can go check out Sense over on Twitch at Sense without the first E, but the second E is still there.
You got it.
Thank you very much for your time, sir. And hopefully you are ready for Najitar when it comes out because of your IRL training.
I think I'm prepared, yep.
Yeah. And there's Lala over on Twitch at Lala_Senpai. I can respect that.
Woohoo!
Thank you very much for your time on the show today, sir. Appreciate you. And there's Marok over on Twitter at X Marok. Just not like uppercase, lowercase, Marok, uppercase, lowercase. You should rename.
Yeah.
You should rebrand.
Yeah. Well, only it wasn't taken. Oh, well.
Aww. Well, thank you for coming back on the show today, sir, helping me put this together. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
But that's it for the show today. Thank you all for tuning in. Of course, if you missed it, YouTube archive or the iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play Music audio only. We have Mistweaver Monk on the horizon coming up here soon. Mistweaver Monk, then Feral Druid, then Elemental Shaman. The Feral Druid Elemental Shaman, however, those might be bumped back a week, depending on if I put together something for Crucible of Storms World first. I don't know. It's only a 2-boss raid. This is going to take a week to do because Unot's ridiculously tuned because the Star Augur mechanic is back, baby! Yeah! It actually is. The polarity is back. Unot Mythic is, Simon says, in a 20-man raid setting again, in a small room. Yes. So I might do like a collaborative world second, world first show once that gets wrapped up. If there's any like controversy or any nonsense that happens in the raid, I don't know if it's going to be something that's weird. It might be done in 16 hours. Limit might get world first before Method even gets in the raid. I don't know. We'll find out. So more on that in the future. But then I got to bring up Feral Druid, Mystery Monk, and again Elemental Shaman because they're all at interesting tipping points in the community right now. That's the goal for the next couple of shows, and then we'll go from there. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback for the show, hit me up on Twitter or on the YouTube comments down below. You've been giving me feedback in chat all day already, so we'll go with you on that one. But until next week, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in. Go check out Corsair, my sponsor. Click the link. Even if you're just clicking a link and going looking at the beautiful cases, because this, I mean, why not, right? I'm putting together a huge build coming up soon with a whole lot of Corsair stuff in it, and I'll do IRL streams on that and do a quote-unquote studio tour. So thank you very much for supporting the show, the stream, and everything in between, and trusting your bonus rolls and your Titan forging gear and your socketed rolls, because that's where all of the stuff matters now. But until next week, everybody. Bye. Wave. Bye, nice people. Wave. Wait a minute.
Bye.
Yeah, Sense isn't waving. I can't get. Oh, I got thumbs up. We got there. Yeah.